You ever wonder what goes through a man's head when he decides to become a weapon? Not carry one. Become one. I saw it happen on Peleliu, September 1944, in a coral trench so narrow you could touch both walls with your elbows. The Imperial Army had a name for these men, but we just called them human bombs, and they were everywhere in those last days. Most of them got shot before they reached us, but one didn't. One made it all the way to our position, and the only thing between him and 12 Marines was a split-second choice I still can't explain. They gave me a commendation later. I burned it. Peleliu was supposed to take 4 days. Command told us it'd be quick, secure the airfield, mop up resistance, move on. That was the plan anyway. Reality had other ideas. The island was 6 miles of coral rock and jungle, and the Japanese had spent months turning it into a fortress. Not the kind you can see from the air, the kind that hides. Caves, tunnels, bunkers carved so deep into the rock that our naval bombardment barely scratched them. When we hit the beach on September 15th, the fire was immediate. Machine guns, mortars, artillery, all pre-sighted, all waiting. The beach was wider than Tarawa, they said, like that was supposed to comfort us. Didn't matter how wide it was when every inch of it was a kill zone. I was 19, Private First Class, 5th Marines, 1st Division, Scout. They sent me ahead because I moved quiet, kept my head down, didn't ask stupid questions. This was my 3rd deployment. Guadalcanal, Tarawa. Now this, I thought I'd seen it all by then. I was wrong. The island fought back in ways I'd never experienced. The coral was so sharp it tore through boot leather in 3 days. Some boys were walking around with their feet wrapped in canvas and rope by the end of the first week. The heat was something else entirely, 110 degrees, humid, thick enough to chew. Men started seeing things that weren't there, shadows that moved wrong, voices in the jungle. We were rationed on water so tight that some guys drank from shell craters, didn't care if there was oil or blood floating in it. The smell never left you. Sulfur from the phosphorus rounds, rot from the bodies we couldn't reach, and something chemical that burned your throat if you breathed too deep. But it was the sound that got to me most. Constant artillery day and night, this low rumble that never stopped. Like the island itself was breathing, like it was alive and angry we were there. My platoon got sent to clear a ravine on day 6. The maps called it something official, but we just called it Dead Man's Gulch. Intelligence said it was abandoned. They were wrong. They were wrong about a lot of things on Peleliu. We moved in at dawn, 3 squads, maybe 40 men total. Corporal Briggs was in command, veteran from Guadalcanal, carried a rosary made from parachute cord, never went anywhere without it. He had this way of knowing when things were about to go sideways, said he could feel it in his teeth. We also had Private Tanaka, a translator on loan from the 442nd. Japanese-American kid from California, spoke the language better than most of us spoke English. Half the platoon didn't trust him at first, wouldn't sit next to him during chow, wouldn't share a foxhole. I didn't care. He was a good Marine. That was enough for me. Then there was Morrison, 17 years old, lied about his age to enlist. Babyface. Wrote letters home every single night. Long ones, 4, 5 pages sometimes. I used to wonder what he found to say. What do you tell your mother about a place like this? The ravine was quiet when we got there. Too quiet. No birds, no insects, nothing. Just this dead silence that made your skin crawl. Briggs felt it immediately. He stopped the column, held up his fist, looked around like he was trying to smell the danger. He told us it reminded him of Guadalcanal right before the night raids. Said the jungle always went quiet first, like it was holding its breath. We set up a defensive perimeter, 3 foxholes in a triangle formation, interlocking fields of fire. I shared mine with Tanaka and Morrison. It wasn't deep, maybe 3 feet, just enough to get your head below ground level. The coral made it impossible to dig any deeper. Your entrenching tool would spark off the rock, and after 20 minutes, your hands would be bleeding. Morrison sat in the corner writing another letter. His hands shook a little. Tanaka checked his rifle for the 3rd time, field stripped it, put it back together. I just watched the tree line and tried to ignore the feeling crawling up my spine. That's when we heard it. Digging, not shovels, fingernails on rock. Scraping. It was coming from underneath us. Someone was tunneling. Briggs called it in on the radio, said we needed engineers with explosives. Command said, hold position. Engineers were pinned down 2 miles north. They'd get to us when they could. So we waited, and the scraping continued all night long. Scratch, scratch, scratch. By dawn I hadn't slept. None of us had. Morrison had given up on his letter, just sat there staring at nothing. Tanaka whispered prayers I didn't recognize. The sun came up blood red through the jungle canopy, and the heat hit us like a wall. That's when the mortars started. Short, precise rounds that landed right on top of our position. We went flat, pressed ourselves into the coral, covered our heads. The explosions weren't random. They knew exactly where we were. They'd been watching, waiting. 3 rounds, 4, then silence. In that silence I heard footsteps. Not boots, bare feet on coral, fast, getting closer. I looked up over the rim of the foxhole and saw him. Japanese soldier breaking from the tree line at a full sprint. He wasn't firing, wasn't yelling, just running straight at us with his arms pumping, face completely blank. Empty. Like he'd gone somewhere else in his head and left. His body on autopilot. That's when I saw his chest, wrapped in grenades. Type 97 hand grenades, maybe 5 or 6 of them, all daisy-chained together with wire and cloth. The pins were already pulled. He was a dead man running. The only question was how many of us he'd take with him. I reached for my rifle. It was propped against the foxhole wall just 2 feet away, but it might as well have been a mile. Tanaka was reloading, fumbling with a fresh magazine. Morrison was still staring at his unfinished letter. Briggs was 20 yards away, too far to do anything. The runner was 15 feet out. 10. I did the math in my head. If those grenades went off in our foxhole, we were all dead. If I shot him at 5 feet, the blast would still kill us. If I did nothing, same result. 3 seconds, that's all I had. 3 seconds to make a choice that made no sense whatsoever. I climbed out of the foxhole, not to shoot him, not to tackle him, but to redirect him, to use my body weight and momentum to change his trajectory, to push him away from the cluster of foxholes and toward the empty section of ravine to our left. I don't know where the idea came from. I don't know if it was training or instinct or just pure panic. But my legs were moving before my brain caught up. I hit him at a full run, shoulder to chest, every bit of force I had. We both went down hard. The coral opened up my knees, my elbows. I could feel the grenades pressed between us, hard and round and warm from his body heat. The fuses were burning. 5 seconds, maybe less. His eyes locked on mine, not angry, not scared, just tired, so tired. Like he'd been carrying something heavy for too long and was glad to finally put it down. I didn't think. I wrapped my arms around him and rolled, once, twice, toward the shell crater 6 feet away. We went over the edge together, fell 4 feet straight down into the hole. The walls were coral, rough and pitted. I pinned his arms with my weight, trapped the grenades between us, and pressed my body against his as flat as I could. I remember thinking this was the dumbest thing I'd ever done. I remember thinking about my mother. I remember thinking the coral smelled like rust and salt. Then the world exploded. The blast was everything and nothing all at once. A flash of white heat, a pressure wave that felt like God's fist slamming into my spine, a sound so loud it erased all other sound. My left eardrum ruptured immediately. I felt it pop, felt something warm run down my neck. Shrapnel tore into my legs, my back, my shoulders. The coral walls contained most of the blast, directed it upward instead of outward, but the force was still enough to crack 2 of my ribs and collapse my right lung. I don't remember the pain, not right away. I remember the silence that came after, this perfect, absolute silence, like someone had turned off the world. I couldn't hear, couldn't breathe, couldn't see through the dust and smoke. I thought I was dead. I thought this was what death felt like. Then hands grabbed me. Briggs? He was yelling something, but I couldn't hear him, couldn't read his lips through all the blood on my face. He dragged me out of the crater like a sack of grain, up over the rim onto flat ground. I tried to stand. Couldn't. My legs didn't work right. Everything was swimming, tilting sideways. I looked back at the crater. There was nothing left of the runner, just fragments, pieces of cloth, dark stains on the coral. Tanaka was standing at the edge of our foxhole, pale as a sheet, shaking. Morrison was on his hands and knees throwing up. Nobody said anything. Nobody said anything for a long time. The medics came eventually, carried me 2 miles south to an aid station set up in a bombed-out bunker. They pulled shrapnel from my back with pliers, bandaged the burns, gave me morphine that made everything soft and distant. A doctor told me my eardrum was gone, said I'd never hear right out of that ear again. He said I was lucky, said I'd be evacuated to a hospital ship, that I was done with Paleliu. I refused. Walked out of the aid station 2 days later and followed the supply trucks back to my unit. Took me 6 hours. My legs barely worked. Every step felt like knives. But I couldn't leave. Not yet. Not like that. When I got back to the platoon, nobody mentioned what happened. Not Briggs, not Tanaka, not Morrison. They just made room for me in the foxhole and handed me a can of rations and acted like nothing had changed. But something had. I could see it in the way they looked at me, or didn't look at me. What I did violated the fundamental rule. You don't sacrifice yourself unless you're taking the enemy with you. I survived. The math shouldn't have worked. It made them uncomfortable in a way they didn't know how to name. One night, Briggs sat down next to me and lit a cigarette, handed it over without a word. We smoked in silence for a while, watching the flares go up over the northern ridgeline. Finally, he said, "You know what you did was crazy, right? You know you should be dead." I nodded. He took the cigarette back, took a long drag. "Good. Don't ever do it again." That was all he said, all he needed to say. Tanaka had a different take. He found me a few days later, sat down with his rifle across his knees, stared at the jungle. He told me the runner was probably a Keshi volunteer, men chosen for suicide missions, sometimes because their families were threatened, sometimes because they believed death in service to the emperor was transcendent, sacred. He wasn't trying to kill you, Tanaka said quietly. He was trying to become the explosion. You turned him back into a person again just for a second. Maybe that's why it worked. I thought about that. Still do. I wonder if, in that last moment before the grenades went off, the runner felt someone holding him. If it mattered, if it changed anything. Morrison made it off Peleliu, got rotated home. 3 months later, went back to Indiana or Ohio or wherever he was from. He sent me a letter in 1947. Said he'd finished that letter he was writing in the foxhole, the one he'd been working on when the runner came. It was to his mother. He told her he was scared. He never sent it, kept it in his pocket through the rest of the war, brought it home, put it in a drawer. He said he didn't know why he was telling me this. I wrote back and said I understood. I did. Peleliu was declared secure in late November. Took 2 months instead of 4 days. Cost us 10,000 casualties. The 1st Marine Division was pulled off the line, what was left of us anyway, and reassigned. The island was never used as a strategic base. Never used for anything. The caves are still there. Some of them were never cleared. I shipped out in December. I've never been back. The incident wasn't mentioned in the after-action reports. There was no medal, no commendation. Briggs tried to put me in for a Bronze Star, but it got denied. Command said there wasn't enough corroborating testimony. I didn't care. I just wanted to forget the sound those grenades made, the way the coral smelled, the look in the runner's eyes. I never did forget. Don't think I ever will. I don't tell people about Peleliu, not because I'm ashamed, not because it's classified, but because the words don't fit anymore. You can say jungle and coral and heat, but you can't make someone feel the weight of that island, the way it sat on your chest, even when you were standing up. You can't explain what it's like to run at a man who's already decided to die, knowing you might die with him and somehow walk away. They asked me once, at a veterans group in '53, why I did it. Why I didn't just shoot him or let him blow himself up away from the foxhole. I didn't have an answer then. I still don't. Maybe it was instinct. Maybe it was stupidity. Maybe it was the only thing my body knew how to do in that moment. Maybe all three. Tanaka said I turned the runner back into a person. I think about that a lot. I wonder if, in that last second, he knew someone was holding him. If it mattered, if it changed the equation somehow, made the blast travel different, made the coral walls hold just a little better, or if it was just dumb luck and physics and the fact that I happened to be the right weight at the right angle, I don't know. I'll never know. Peleliu took 10,000 of us. Most of them are still there in a way, in the coral, in the caves, in the stories no one tells because they're too ugly, too complicated, too small for the history books. The island was abandoned after the war, overgrown, forgotten. There are memorials now, I hear, plaques, tour guides. I wonder if they mention Dead Man's Gulch. I doubt it. It wasn't on the maps. I think about Morrison sometimes, finishing that letter to his mother. I think about Briggs, who died in a car accident in '55, never fired, a shot in anger again after Peleliu. I think about Tanaka, who went back to California and opened a grocery store and never talked about the war. And I think about the runner, whose name I'll never know, who was 19 or 20 or maybe younger, who believed in something so completely he was willing to strap grenades to his chest and run at strangers. I don't know if what I did was right. The brass didn't think so. Half my platoon didn't think so. Some days I don't think so either. But I know those 11 men went home. I know Morrison got to see his mother again. I know Briggs got to hold his daughter. I know Tanaka got to build something that wasn't about killing. And some nights, when the dreams are bad and I wake up smelling sulfur and coral dust, that's enough. It has to be.